Hi, good evening. I'm Lonnie Stonich, the Executive Director of FAN, and I'm honored to welcome you to tonight's conversation between Rachel Macy Stafford and Dr. Shefali Tsabary. Thanks for joining us. FAN is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, and we're honored to have the robust support of dozens of schools, nonprofits, corporations, families, and individuals from across the country. We are committed to our vision of an informed and compassionate community, and will achieve that vision by presenting fresh ideas that elevate minds, expand hearts, and make the world a better place. We have hundreds of videos of past events archived on our YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe to get updates when new recordings are posted. And now for some introductions. Rachel Macy Stafford is the New York Times bestselling author of Hands-Free Mama, Only Love Today, and Live Love Now, to just name a few. She's a certified special education teacher whose personal strategies are universal invitations to embrace life with urgency and cultivate connection despite the distractions of our culture. Her blog is a source of inspiration to millions. Shefali Tsabary received her doctorate in clinical psychology from Columbia University. Specializing in the integration of Western psychology and Eastern philosophy, she brings together the best of both worlds for her clients. She's an expert in family dynamics and personal development, teaching courses around the globe. Dr. Shefali has written 5 books, 3 of which are New York Times bestsellers, including her 2 landmark books, The Conscious Parent and The Awakened Family. Her latest book, brand new, is The Parenting Map, Step-by-Step Solutions to Consciously Create the Ultimate Parent-Child Relationship. It was released in February of this year. And now let's welcome Rachel Macy Stafford and Dr. Shefali to FAN.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Hi, Rachel.
Yeah. Thank you for hosting us tonight, Shefali.
Of course, of course. So just to warm up the audience, can you just give us a, high-level idea behind Soul Shift? What inspired you? Why Soul Shift? Why this book? Why now?
Well, so before I begin, I just want to thank you because I feel like what you were teaching in 2015 about this idea of being a conscious parent, that was like the first time I ever got introduced to the idea that maybe I didn't have to have all the answers, that maybe my children were here to teach me as much as I was to teach them. And so I just think what you gave me was this freedom to have a new role, and not be the mistake monitor, the taskmaster, but more of the encourager. And so that's how I wanted to start today, because you are just a very important influence in my life. And of course, you've influenced my work and then everyone that I've been able to reach. So it's really an honor that you accepted the invitation to be with us tonight. So thank you. So Soul Shift. What I realized when I was living this incredibly distracted life, I was distracted not only by the external factors in my life, the phone, the to-do list, the pressures, but also I was distracted by some of my own obstacles to loving myself and feeling joy. And it all kind of came crashing down on me back in, it was around 2012 when I realized I am missing my life because I'm constantly living this distracted life. And as painful as that was to acknowledge, it was also a relief to be able to tell the truth and just to put that out there and say, yeah, this is not how I want to live. I don't feel like I'm knowing my children. I don't feel like I'm knowing my partner. And that felt just not in line, not in line with how I wanted to live. So this idea of soul shift was born by the fact that I had accepted that painful truth of I'm missing my life because I'm living too distracted, too overwhelmed, too stressed. And now that I'm aware, what am I going to do to take small steps to kind of reclaim my peace and the meaning in my life? So the process of soul shift is when you have uncomfortable feelings that come up and emotions, or you see an expression of pain on your child's face, or someone that you love makes a comment or an observation that's painful to hear, instead of pushing that away, you accept, you acknowledge that, and you say, does this match how I'm feeling? And sure enough, every time I accepted these painful truths, which I kind of like, I go through 8 of them in Soul Shift, painful truths about how present I was, what I was basing my worth on, my need for perfection. Those changes came from admitting a painful truth and feeling those uncomfortable feelings. And one of the things that you've taught me, and so this is your new book that I am reading and just soaking up all of your knowledge, but something that you said in there reminds me of Soul Shift. And you said, as we heal from within, we begin to live in a more authentic state. This directly impacts our capacity to connect with our children. The more attuned we are to ourselves, the more attuned we are to them. And that feels so in line with the way that Soul Shift has worked for me, is knowing it's not my job to fix my children or control my children or manage my children. My job is to turn the spotlight onto me. What parts of me need healed so that I can give them the love and acceptance that they need to thrive. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Beautiful. No, thank you. So what you're saying in essence is really the most difficult thing for humans to do, which is to enter the present moment, to really own what we're feeling, the vulnerability, the shame, the pain. And then we have to go on this process, on this quest to deconstruct that. And part of that, you would talk about it, I talk about it. Part of that work is twofold: to understand how culture from the outside has made us feel, like you said, the need to be perfect, the need to be in control. Culture has done that, but then our childhood has done that. And so now we need to unlayer that. And the beauty of children and intimate relationships is that they are the harbingers of that quest, right? They're telling you, hey, wake up, you're too controlling, you're not present. But the hardest thing is to take those messages as that wake-up call, right? As an invitation. But we get so threatened.
Exactly.
We're so used to turning it away. So what I loved in your book is you say in the introduction of Soul Shift, the essence of Soul Shift is really about undertaking a life-changing journey of uncovering and responding to one's deepest truths in a way that inspires positive change and profound transformation. So tell us, what would that look like? How does one respond to one's deepest truths, right? How does one begin to pay attention? I typically say, don't worry, your world will collapse. If you don't want to listen, the world will clamor for your attention. So do you want to wait for that, the tumult on the outside, or do you want to tune in? But not to worry, there will be a wake-up call, right? So how do we do it, though? You're saying how to do it proactively.
Yes.
So how does one begin to respond to one's deepest truths proactively?
Well, when you become more aware as just as a human being, to say, all day long, I'm receiving messages from my heart, my mind, my body. And it takes a lot of really intention to begin to pay attention to those cues. And we have them all day, and those painful ones, it's why we reach for the phone. It's why we reach for the distraction, the constantly busy schedule. And I know from personal experience, like, although that distracted life was because it was painful to be still with myself and to really take a hard look at the disconnection I was having with my family, which was really like one of my biggest values was to be close to my children. And I was watching, how is this crumbling? And this is painful. So my encouragement to people would just be to pay attention to these cues that something is not right, and to be brave with, even talking about it. Some of the hardest conversations that I had with my husband, Scott, was just to ask him, like, how do you think I've changed since we've been together? And I went from, a very positive special education teacher who was really good at like seeing the silver linings, to this mom who was a manager and a taskmaster and a mistake monitor. And for Scott to say to me, "You're just not happy anymore, Rachel," and not as a criticism, but as a he cared. He was concerned for me. And it took a lot of times for him to say, "I'm concerned about you," for me to say, maybe I should listen. And so I think it just begins with this acceptance that there could be more that you maybe just don't see, or you're not feeling, you're not giving yourself the space.
So something very personal happened. You felt that how you were with your children's names are Avery and Natalie, I think.
Yes, yes.
So what happened? Like, if you can make it really tangible.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about my big turning point was when my daughter was around 3, and I was like yelling at her like a witch, and I saw her body deflate, like literally, like I was like taking all the air out of her wings. I just saw her like just become limp. Thank goodness I caught it. And I was aghast at what a demonic, rageful person I was at this little 3-year-old, but I was very threatened by her because I was a 2-year-old, So that really like messed me up, and I really took myself to task and began doing the deep work. So did you have moments like that? Was it one moment, a cascade of moments? And
there's one that probably stands out the most. And again, it's hard to talk about these things because I know, especially with my firstborn daughter, I was really hard on her. I expected so much from her because, I was doing that to myself, and it was spilling out onto Natalie. But she was climbing up on a stool to get a snack out of the pantry, and she spilt an entire bag of rice. And as you can imagine, thousands of grains hitting the floor. And I was about to lose my, what? And I saw this look of fear in her eyes, that she was scared of my reaction to her honest mistake. And like you, I was shocked. I was saddened. I thought, oh my gosh, what have I become? But as I mentioned earlier, to not look away, I could have just cleaned it up really fast, shoved everything in the pantry and just gone on with it. But I let myself feel this is not the way I want to be. This is not the mom I want to be. This is not how I want to be remembered. And I didn't want her to be scared to take risks and to do brave things in her life because of the way that I reacted to her mistakes. And so that was a real wake-up call for me.
Yeah. So, that turning away, right? Most of us are not even able to lean in, right? Turning away is our pattern. We're avoiders. And
Yes.
very hard to take accountability. And I think your whole book is voyage into greater accountability.
Mhm.
And you talk about compassion. So talk about that a little bit more about, not wanting to blame
Yes.
or not wanting to just gloss over.
Mhm.
And, just today I was with a mother and she was like, well, she screamed at her daughter complained to me. And she said, well, my daughter was being disrespectful. She was walking away while I was talking to her. And I said to her, but your daughter's having a mental health crisis. Does it matter? Does respect matter right now? But
Mhm.
we just can't let it go. So how do we begin to let it go and do this empathic turn, leaning in? You were so empathic. I was so empathic. But most
Yeah.
people don't have that empathy. And then we don't have empathy and compassion for ourselves. They go together.
Right.
Self-criticism is other criticism. Self-loathing is other loathing. And self-empathy and self-compassion is other empathy. So talk about how you began to develop this more and how you invite the readers to develop compassion, empathy, accountability.
Well, because of my experience as a special education teacher with kids that had behavior issues, I knew that telling them, you're so far off your path, or you're never going to amount to anything. Like, they've been hearing these negative messages and really messages of you're not enough. I knew that is not how we heal. That is not how we change. That is not how we make transformation in our life. And I knew I wanted it to be different than it was. And I actually verbalized to Natalie, I said, I am mean to you because I am mean to myself. And I don't know how, but I'm going to work on changing that. And so to be able to say that to my child, it was an interesting reaction, because she didn't look scared. She didn't look like, oh my gosh, my mom's not what I thought she was. She almost looked hopeful, like, oh, my mom sees, and she's going to try to do something differently. And what I realized, and when I work through my workshops with people with the soul shift, I realized we are the ones who block ourselves from love. A lot of it's, we don't think we're worthy of love and compassion. And I did not just jump from being a kind of a bully to myself. I didn't just jump from that to speaking compassionately to myself. But what I did do is I began to pay attention to when that critical inner voice was running the show. I paid attention to where am I when I get triggered? And I realized in front of the mirror, I would end up yelling at my children every time we were about to leave the house. Why? Why was I always yelling at them and berating them? It was because I stood in the mirror and berated myself. And so to pay attention to that negative inner critic and say, I'm not going to listen to this. What I had to do was a stop phrase. When I heard that inner critic, I said, only love today, directed at me. I am worthy of only love today. And so becoming aware is the first step to changing that critical self-talk to one of compassion. And I had to start with a stop phrase, only love today. And as I put only love today on Post-it notes all over the house. The girls, they said, what is this? What is this? I said, it's what I'm trying to do. Instead of being mean to myself, I'm trying to be kind to myself. And so it became kind of an approach to life. I'm going to approach things with only love, not shame, not expectation, not pressure. And then eventually that compassion, that compassionate voice started kind of rising up in me that said, Rachel, you don't have to be perfect. Rachel, you don't have to look a certain way to show up at this meeting. You are enough. Your contribution is in here. It's not out here. So that's how I began, and how I teach the people who come to my workshops is just really, we don't realize how often we talk critically to ourselves. And the first step to changing that is to begin to notice.
Right. It's such a second nature to us to
Yes.
this inner critic that we don't even realize how we are
Bless you.
how we are perpetuating the ancestral patterns in our lives, right? And this is just this lack-based, scarcity-based mentality that we breathe, and we don't even know that it's something we have inherited. We think we're right. We think we're right to say, you're so stupid, or you're not good enough, or you're not perfect. It doesn't even raise an alarm bell in us, because we've been raised in a suffering culture, in a culture, which believes in the suffering of existence, and that you have to pay for your punishments and your crimes, and you have to pay severely through sacrifice. And so it's a very punitive Western model that we are raising our children in, and we were raised in. And we have to really understand that as parents, where are we in the culture scape? And where we are is in a very lack-based, punishment-driven, very cruel, suffering mentality of this. Everything needs to be out of suffering, out of punishment. Jesus
died. A lesson.
Jesus died on the cross, so you're a sinner. You have to. But we don't realize how it colors our lenses, and how we have to now shift it to a joy-based, a wholeness-based, an abundance-based perspective. It's very deeply rooted in our psyche. So it's a soul shift, as you say. I loved your, putting the signs, only love. We cannot do this without real practice, without real application. We cannot become conscious. People come to me and go, okay, I'm going to be conscious. It's not a decision. It's not a mental decision. It's an actualization of consciousness. Your consciousness rises. I tell people, don't talk about it. You will just become it. And you will only become it if you practice. So talk to us about other practices. Talk to us about maybe how do we, in this technologically driven world, become more present? That's your real specialty, even as hands-free mama. So talk about presence, and what are some practical ways we can become more present?
Well, one of the things that I started to notice when I realized I am not fully available to the people that I love. Even I might be physically there, but I'm not there emotionally. And what I realized is there were some red flag behaviors that I started to pay attention to. And one of those was this need to always have the phone nearby. That to me is a sign I'm too dependent on this. Another one was that I felt panicky if the phone wasn't right there. Reaching for the phone at times when it could be dangerous, like driving, or reaching for it even during wait time, when I'm sitting there waiting, we're waiting for our food, and I have this urge to check the phone. So I realized, okay, when I'm thinking about that, I'm being pulled away from what matters. So what do I do? Well, one of the things that really helped was to realize, okay, I need boundaries because technology it just bleeds into everything. We have no boundaries. So we have to set them up, which we decide, okay, this room is going to be a distraction-free room. We don't bring our phones in here, or we have rituals. That was one of the things I started, was distraction-free rituals. When someone walks through the door, I want to be fully present. When we say our goodbyes, when someone gets in the car, when we have a meal, when I take care of my cat, it's like we have to decide, okay, this is non-negotiable, because the minute that we begin opening the gate, it floods in and it begins to take over. And so I used this idea of protected spaces, protected times, and verbalize them to my family, because I started being hands-free when my girls were younger, but to do that as they grew into teenagers, and it became kind of a way of life, that presence and connection is a priority over distraction and rapid responses. That was a gift to them as well. And I don't think it's ever too late to say, you know what? I realized technology is really overruling our lives. It's really interfering with our conversations. Let's work together to figure out how we can make some boundaries.
So talk to us about this exercise. It's called closest, furthest list. What is that?
So one of the things, your work is so much about becoming aware. And so this is a really easy tool to raise your awareness. You think about, when do I feel the closest to what matters? When do I feel the farthest from what matters? For me, the closest is easy. It's when I'm out walking in the sunshine with my music. Sometimes I'll think about a creative endeavor. Sometimes I'll pray. Sometimes I'll work through a problem. But I feel the closest to what matters outside, moving my body. I feel the closest to what matters when my daughter, who's 16, Avery, and I, we go for a coffee and we leave our phones at home. And she does this interesting thing where she sticks her hand out the window and feels the wind, and we harmonize to the music. And that's a moment where I say, remember this, remember how this feels, this completely, fully present moment. And how can I put myself in more of these situations? And then on the reverse, I realize I am the farthest from what matters when I am letting my phone dictate my life, when it's the first thing I reach for in the morning. That's pulling me very far away from what matters when I look at that first. Or when I'm inhaling my lunch at the kitchen counter and not mindfully savoring the bites and giving myself time because I'm worthy of enjoying the food. And so I tell people, start paying attention as you're going through your day tomorrow. Have a little pad of paper, write down, I felt closest to what matters when, and then I felt furthest from what matters when. And when you realize this is what I'm doing that pulls me away, then you can start to make different choices. So it's a beginning of that awareness that leads to different patterns.
Yeah, I love that. Because we're I'm guilty of everything, you just said. I'm with the animal, I'm on my phone, my phone is right here. I'm panicking when it's not next to me. And of course, I create a justification. Oh, I'm doing a launch, or, oh, my daughter needs me. But, the lingering obvious question is, what did you do before there was a phone? And I don't want to answer that. But I think we've become so afraid of the moments in between, the waiting for the bus, the sitting at the tarmac. It's intolerable for us. And what we don't realize, we think, oh, what's the big deal? I'll just watch another 1,500 Instagram reels. But we don't understand the big deal is not in the watching of the Instagram reels, although there's problems there. The problem is we've forgotten and are intolerant of sitting in the isness of the present moment without accoutrements, without adornments. We don't realize what that is doing to us. And we see it with our children. They are unable to tolerate, I don't want to say blanket sweeping statements, but they're fragile these days because they are not able to tolerate much. Hence the cancel culture, and hence the great plummeting mental well-being in our children, because they're bombarded at all times and they haven't yet developed a connection to themselves. So it's not about that Instagram or social media is good or bad. That's like secondary. The real problem is that as humans, we deserve quietude, solitude, reflection, nothingness, boredom, peace. We don't realize what is being snatched away and how it diminishes the quality of our interactions, our presence, our capacity to make beautiful integrative plans with our lives, and we're haphazard. And anyway, it's just really beautiful.
I think that for me, that was one of the most powerful reinforcements that I got when I began to say, I'm going to have these hands-free increments. And I started with 10 minutes because I knew I can't push all of this distraction away for more than 10 minutes because I'm so dependent. But even starting with a very small increment of time and saying, I'm going to just let myself be available to feel, to think, to love and to laugh and just see what happens. It was so interesting, the peace that I felt in those moments. I couldn't find that anywhere outside of, with the internet and with the busyness and the schedule. And I realized this is what I'm missing. This peacefulness. And so that's why I try to tell people, you don't have to start with a big overhaul of your life. You don't have to go ditch your phone, for 24 hours. Try a small increment, start there. Or say, if you have a teenager, it's hard. They don't want to separate themselves, but sometimes you say, you know what, let's make these cookies together. Let's put our phone in this box, let's have fun. And sometimes I think the kids need us to set those boundaries. And even though they might kick and scream, there's a nice feeling that they get also from having a break. Because like you said, they're inundated. And so the more that we can show our kids how to live life as it's happening, rather than through a screen, the more they're going to know how to fulfill themselves. They're going to know what feeds my soul. It's not going to be found on the phone.
Right. I love that. The greatest destroyer, I always say, of joy and the present moment is perfectionism. And you talk a lot about how you let go of perfectionism. Talk to us about that. Give us a few strategies. And then you talk about your dreamer girl, and I want to get to that as well. So, let us in on some real palpable strategies we can begin to, because we're all suffering from perfectionitis, I call it. So how did you battle yours?
Well, I think it's important to note when people hear the word perfection, they think it means trying to be perfect. And what I think about it as fear of not being enough. And I think a lot of us have that fear of not being enough. So we have these excessive standards that we put on ourselves, that we put on our loved ones. And so what happened in my life was realizing that trying to portray this facade that I had it all together, that my children were perfect, that, you know, we always matched and our hair was just right. But behind closed doors, there was a lot of pain in the making of that happen, in that facade. And so what was interesting to me was I realized, okay, perfection is about control. I have everything gripped so tightly that my kids can't evolve, they can't grow, they can't become independent. And I am really sabotaging my chance at experiencing joy. So the posture of acceptance was something that was introduced in my life, that it would be okay, one small choice at a time, to release control, to release expectation, to say, okay, we're not going to be on time for this appointment. That does not mean I have to drive like a maniac and scream at my family because we're running late. What if I try to say, we're going to get there when we can, and we will apologize when we get there for being late, and it will be okay. And so I almost had these rules about the way that I lived. I thought everything had to be a certain way. But then I realized, okay, to let go of something, to say, yes, I have a stain on my shirt, but it's okay. I'm going to go to this dinner date anyway, because it's not about what I have on. It's about who I am. And then seeing when I show up that it's okay. It is about who I am, not what I look like, not what I have achieved. And so these little postures of acceptance that people can start doing in their life when they think, I'm the one who has to clean up the kitchen, I'm the only one who can do this, to say, maybe I should release control and let someone else try. And yes, it's not going to be done the way that I did it, but that's okay. And for me, 3 words, 4 words, how would you do it? How would you do it was a catalyst for healing in my house, where I had tried to control everything and everyone. I started when Avery was trying to brush her hair, and normally I would just do it really fast and I'd pull it back, and I held out the brush to her and I said, how would you do it? And I watched as she very gently combed her hair and brought it forward, and she smiled at herself. And I thought, I don't want to keep robbing my children of this opportunity to feel capable, to feel proud. And so even with Scott, my husband, I said, okay, how would you do this when we're taking the girls out for an adventure, letting him dictate? And those releases, that's how I felt connection with my family for the first time, because I wasn't trying to control it. So how would you do it? It's a beautiful way to start that release. And
I love that. You know, we talk about wanting our children to be self-governing and self-initiating, but then we're doing everything for them, right?
Yeah.
Khalil Gibran says in his beautiful poem from the Prophet, you know, you can give your children love, but don't give them your thoughts, right? Well, they have their own thoughts, but we cannot conceive of that, that they can have their own thoughts. So we are pumping them constantly with the how to and the what to do and the what if, not realizing that each time we do, we rob them of their own capacity to develop their own discovery, right? And we don't realize what a huge abduction we are committing on a daily basis with our children. So finally, talk to us about the reclamation of joy. You talk about this dreamer girl. What is that? Is that our inner child, our uninhibited selves? What
Yeah.
is that part of us?
Well, all I know is I was in kind of a breakdown moment where I felt like everything was just crashing down on me. Everything was so heavy. And I just had this need to escape, to run out of my house. I did not have shoes on. I was in my pajamas. I got in the car and I felt the cold metal of the pedal on my foot. And suddenly I was transported back to my 6-year-old self who never put on shoes and just wanted to run outside in the grass. And in that moment that I thought I needed to escape, hearing that dreamer girl, that girl that loved to write in notebooks and feed stray cats and make theatrical performances in the backyard, I could hear her saying, recover me. I'm still here. That joyful, uninhibited, creative, abundant part of you. You don't need to escape. You need to explore. You need to stop saying, this is my life. I'm on this path. This is the way it's going. But say, maybe there's a detour I can take. Maybe I can start listening to my heart a little bit more. And that is the next day I went out and I got a notebook just like I used when I was in elementary school. And I began writing my thoughts and journaling and being able to feel heard, not necessarily by a human, but to my soul, to a higher power. To feel heard was so healing. And eventually I started listening when my dreamer girl would say, hey, there's a swing on that playground. And I thought, well, here I am, I'm an adult, I'm taking this walk, I'm, trying to get my steps in, but my heart is saying, get on that swing, and I'm going to listen. And the more that I began listening to those urges to return to those things that made me so happy when I was a girl, that is what helped me start to feel joy again. And to be able to take my daughters with me and say, this is something I love to do when I was a kid. Will you do this with me? And for them to know, wow, my mom was funny, or I like to hear my mom laugh. I know I could see on their faces, they liked the playful mom that threw on a hat, bypassed the mirror. We said, let's go explore. Our kids want to see us being able to experience the joy in life and not always be so serious.
Yeah, I love that. I think your whole book is such an ode to the reclamation of an inner deep connection. And I just love the way you write. I think you have this soulful, very poetic, beautiful, soul-stirring way of reminding us what's really important. So please go grab this book, read it, join her workshops, spread the book to everyone. I congratulate you. It's such a lovely offering to the world. And I cannot wait for the message to get out there. So we're going to take a few questions now from the audience.
Shefali, would you like to take them yourself? Because I can turn off my camera if you want to take them, or I can do them either way.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you. So first, let me say thank you so much for such a beautiful conversation. I know people are really feeling touched by the exchange. To no surprise, two such insightful and spiritually grounded human beings having this kind of conversation is just It's the chef's kiss. So thank you so much for all of it. I'll go to a couple questions. So here's a question from Maureen. She says, oh, first I want to remind folks that we are going to be doing an after hours with Rachel Macy Stafford. It's going to start at 8:05 Central. So it's in about 20 minutes from now. This Zoom will end at 8 o'clock Central. The way you get to come and ask your own questions, hang out, give some observations, maybe tell a few jokes, buy a copy of Soul Shift. Our bookseller will send you a email receipt, and in there will be the link to register for after hours. It's a whole lot of fun. It lasts about an hour. It'll go to 9 o'clock Central. So come along, please, please, please. And now I want to go to a question from Maureen. She's asking, and let me pull it over here so I'm not just turning my head. Here we go. I appreciated the reflection on self-compassion equals compassion for others. What are your, both Rachel and Dr. Shefali, what are your best practices for fostering self-compassion?
You go ahead, Rachel.
So for fostering self-compassion, I have learned that when I say to myself something critical, like, I'm so unmotivated, that's something I say to myself a lot, because I know that for years and years and years, I based my worth on what I accomplished. So the worst thing is being unmotivated. And so when I'm tired and I'm not feeling like doing my work, I'll say, I'm so unmotivated. So what I do is I change that to second person. What would that sound like? You are so unmotivated. Now I bristle a little because I know I would never say that to my child. I would not say that to my friend. What would I say? I would say, Rachel, you have just come off a long stretch of launching your book and dealing with some medical issues. And it's very human to be tired, and you don't have to earn rest. You are worthy of rest. And so it's, for me, it's thinking about how would that sound if I said what I just said critically to myself? How would that sound? And what would I say to kind of step back and have kind of a more of an impartial view of the situation, kind of step back from yourself? That's how I have begun to speak more compassionately. What about you, Dr. Shefali?
The critical voice in us is not our true voice. It's a voice that we've inherited. So once you become aware of your critical voice, you can watch it with a space and a distance to go, oh, there's my mom again, or there's my aunt again, or there's culture again. It's not my true voice. My true self has no self-criticism or other criticism because it's boundless, it's limitless, it just is. So as you begin to heal, you begin to understand, this is not even a voice I just go, oh, yeah, I hear you. That's culture's voice. That's Becky's voice. That's auntie's voice. That's grandma's voice. And I just notice it and I go, damn, it's strong today. Oh, hello, grandma, you're strong today. I just let her talk. She or it can exist, but it's not going to occupy all of me. And the other wisdom I can offer you is that just like Rachel said, we wouldn't dare talk like that to another human being. For me now, my self-worth is so great and my self-love is so great. I wouldn't dare talk like that to me too. I'm scared of me. I'll come and beat that voice up. I'm very important. So I'm like, just like you wouldn't talk like that to another being, I'm as important. So it's an act of violence toward me. So I don't dare to mess with me either now, because I'm a person of worth. So again, as you heal, you begin to understand this and you see the illusion of this critical voice. It's not yours. So just learn, identify whose is it. And every time it comes up, give it a name and go, there goes Maureen again. Hello, Maureen, whoever Maureen was, and don't let her keep talking. But you know your self-worth, right? You know who you are. And you are always simply just energy and nothing more. So you're undefinable, unidentifiable, uncomparable. So when you heal, you realize those things.
Well, that's beautiful.
For sure. Excuse me. Patricia is asking, I beg your pardon, my asthma is acting up with all the allergies out right now. You're talking about perfectionism, and I'm thinking about my 9-year-old on the spectrum. She needs to be perfect. She doesn't feel enough. How can I help her? I don't.
Well, one of the tips that I have for that, I learned from Sandy Blackard. She wrote a book on, let's see, I can't remember the title at this moment, but Sandy Blackard helped me realize, because I'm a perfectionist, I have a perfectionist child, but we often think that we are supposed to say, oh, don't worry, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be perfect. But then what we're hearing is, because it does matter to us, so what we're hearing is there's something wrong with you. So when you say to your child, just relax, go play, it doesn't matter, you don't have to do that perfectly, they're thinking something's wrong with me. So Sandy Blackard has taught me that there is power in validation, to say, you wanted that to be a certain way, didn't you? And just to let them have the relief in saying, it's okay to be me. So besides validating that, what else would you say, Dr. Shefali?
Yeah, but I think that's very important. Like, I get it. Yeah, you want to be amazing. I get it. I get it. So when you validate, you not only let them know they're okay, you also say, I'm here with you. I'm sharing it with you. I get it. I'm like that too. So now, okay, that's one part of you. Now let's have the other parts of you be accessible, and let's do it anyway, right? You wanted it that way, but it's not happening. Now let's access other parts of you. I think the greatest gift you can give your children is to let them know that there are parts of them. Not all is one part. And that they have access to different parts. Okay, you have the jealous part, you have the insecure part, you have the scared part, but you still have all other parts that you can access that can function. So as long as you as a parent don't overreact to your child's anxiety, they'll also learn to manage. Okay, so I get it. I'm here with you. I feel just the same way. And right, it's a that and. It's not a no, just stop being so over dramatic, nor is it a total panic. Oh my goodness, this is a big deal. It's a yes and. And if the parent can stay equanimous and validating, share it, take the burden, but also let's flow, the child will eventually learn that.
Great advice. We have a question from Jewel. She says, Rachel, when things suddenly feel completely overwhelming, what's the first thing you do?
Well, I've learned the first thing I need to do when I feel overwhelmed is to get quiet, because I know that overwhelming for me means I have too much coming at me. I have too many requests and demands, or I feel like people are wanting from me, and I'm depleted. And so overwhelm for me feels like I'm full up to here, and I can't take any more, even anyone touching me. And so that's when I know I need some time alone. I need to listen to myself. And usually when I get quiet, when I breathe, when I listen to my heart, I usually can figure out, okay, I need to scale back on something. I need to put a boundary up. You can't figure out why you're feeling this overwhelming stress until you get quiet and saying, what doesn't feel right? And what can I do about it?
I appreciate that as well. Megan is asking, what's one important routine or tradition to establish right away within a family?
What was the first part? A ritual or
What is
tradition?
one important routine or tradition?
Well, for me, we started talk time when Natalie was 3. She coined the phrase. She said, "Mom, I want to have talk time in the bed, and I want you to tell me something bad that happened in the world. Do not make it up. I want it to be true." And that was to me an invitation to tell my daughter about the struggles and the pain in the world in a way that she could understand, and to let her know that she had a purpose in healing that and easing that pain. And so talk time, we used it, she's 19 now, and she'll come home from college and she'll say, "Can we have talk time?"
Oh,
I know it doesn't happen very often, but when she asks me for that closeness, I know that there's a bond there. And that's a time when we can tell each other things that are hard to say in the daylight. And so I think having a protected ritual, I don't know what that would look like for anyone else's family, but for us, it was the bedtime. But I think just having one of those where we say, "This is ours. We're not going to bring our phones. We're not going to bring our guilt, our expectations. We're just going to show up."
mhm. Shefali is wondering, might you give us a suggestion as well?
I like that. I think what we're really trying to say is, have these touch points during the day where you're making sure that you're very much connected and present. And I think early mornings are very special, and late at night, bedtime, hands down, is the most precious time. And children remember that, they remember these touch points, and you can make a ritual and you can make a welcome song every time they come off the bus, and they'll remember it forever. And boy, will they remember it, right? They'll make you be singing it when you're like 60, but it's important to them. My daughter's 20 now, and she'll remember these things. Remember when we used to do that? And you're like, wow, I didn't know you cared.
Yeah.
So these touch point moments and consistency and repetition, this narrative that is very reassuring for our children.
Beautiful. All right, well, we're just about out of time. In fact, we are out of time. Rachel, do you want to say anything as we close out? Any last words before after hours?
Just again, thank you, Dr. Shefali. This is like a dream come true to be in this conversation with you. And again, I've learned from you tonight, and I'm just so grateful. So thank you.
I'm so proud to have been here, and it's an honor. Thank you, Lonnie, and for FAN, and it's such an amazing organization. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and make sure you read the book.
And don't forget about the parenting map too.
I know, and I like all your stickies sticking out.
I would say this would make a nice combo.
I like that idea. Absolutely. All right, well, thank you everyone for showing up. We appreciate it.